this should prove to be an interesting video. Styx, Hex, and Hammer. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Styx. We definitely have some audience overlap. Political commentator, author, editor, staunchly libertarian the man is. Now, let me just make this clear and sort of explain the title of the video. It was the friendliest way that I could phrase it. I'm a big fan of Styx. I watch his content pretty much every day. It's very rare that I will have a disagreement with the man. The only time I do is when his philosophical idealism obscures the perception of reality. In my humble opinion, of course. There's a reason I call him the Libertarian of the Shire, because the man's surname is Warwick, for heaven's sakes. Of course he longs for the Shire. He's an Englishman, it's in his bloodline. Styx's worldview can be summed up with the 3 Fs: farm, firearms, and fuck off. He's a very simple man in the Leonard Skinner kind of sense. But he did a video a little over a week ago called Expanding SCOTUS Would Be a Never-Ending Disaster. So, let's hear the man out.
The whole point of the Supreme Court, and originally the concept of the filibuster, was to stabilize it. The idea was that they're going to move low and slow, and it'll be frustrating to people who really want an issue that's taken up by the court. They feel strongly about a certain issue, but the idea was to slow things down. It's sort of like originally the Senate wasn't even voted for by the people of the United States in the general election sense. They were appointed by a vote by state houses. So the senators were chosen by the representatives in the state. And that was another stopgap against tyranny, actually. The whole idea was to slow things down, to make it deliberately more slow, to make things deliberately more demure. The Supreme Court was supposed to be the ultimate stopgap on tyranny, effectively.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and break it up so it doesn't look like I'm just pillaging Styx's work here. So we got pace of government apparatus. Eh?
Now, has it always worked? No, of course not. It's definitely flawed. Is it better than the legislative process we currently see? I would rate the Supreme Court much higher than I would rate the current House of Representatives. And probably the Senate as well.
Oh, that's funny for so many reasons.
And that's because of the decorum that's involved with the process of choosing the justices, the process of actually getting them in there. You know, you have to get through Congress, etc., etc.
Etc., etc., you say. It's funny, Styx, you think arguably the highest rated part of government is the least democratic. The monarch in me is pleased at this.
That's deliberately the purpose. It's the whole point. The judiciary is supposed to be effectively completely independent from the other branches of government, just as the others are independent from one another as well. The executive branch has certain powers, duties, and responsibilities. Congress has certain powers, duties, and responsibilities, and so does the judiciary. The concept is the splitting of government into 3 components that don't always necessarily work well together. Sometimes things are badly coordinated, sometimes things are inefficient, sometimes things slow to a crawl, an issue is not taken up, a bill is not put forward, etc., etc. The whole point, though, is to slow down the machinations of government, to prolong the republic. Because the founders very wisely understood, hey, you know, if things move too quickly, if things are just rubber stamped over and over, we're going to end up like England. We're going to end up with a massive bureaucracy, which we have, unfortunately. We're going to end up with the government functions being dysfunctional. I mean, we've got that too. We're going to end up with no accountability and then probably end up with a king or something like that.
I fail to see the problem.
We've got to slow things down. We've got to make sure that people actually have time to understand what they're voting on.
Strongly disagree.
Debate things, etc., etc.
Debates imply that people are swayed by better arguments. I think Plato would disagree.
The judiciary, therefore, moves very slowly. It can be frustrating sometimes, but it is better than the alternative.
Okay. For the new folks, I've been working on this anti-democratic piece for about 9 months now, where I basically light it on fire and kick it down a flight of stairs. Fun times, and I'm pulling rather generously from that piece of work here. Now, I happen to agree with Styx, the precedent it would set with expanding the Supreme Court. However, I fundamentally disagree with everything else he just said. And I base this on an axiom that is going to piss off so many Americans, so brace yourselves. The US Constitution is a failure of a document that doesn't mean jack shit. And it won't be the last time I say that either, by the way. Never mind how the US Constitution was brought into being through illegal centralizations of power. Technically speaking, it is only binding to the signatories. If you were a newbie to US politics, but you had some competence around civilizational structure, and you listen to how the US is supposed to function, what it looks like, what it does, any sane person would think it's a horrid dysfunctional mess that makes no sense. Look at the structures that Styx himself points out, the three branches that have their own functions and duties. Ambition must be made to counteract ambition. Words of James Madison in The Federalist, by the way. And Styx's main point there was the slowing down of government. The problem here, though, is this is not indicative of anything objectively good about the intentions of government, merely the pace of procedure. If your government is composed of a bunch of bastards, all this means is they're gonna shiv each other for objectively bad ends no matter who wins. At this point, the structure of government is irrelevant. It doesn't mean jack shit when all of its inhabitants are immoral actors motivated by their own personal greed. Which is why founding father John Adams said, our Constitution is made only for moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And it plays off something Styx alluded to there as well. The branches have their own sets of functions and duties. These are traits born of the human spirit and its sentiments, not merely animated by pieces of paper. America was founded as an aristocratic republic. If you don't have a lineage of aristocratic stock to pull from, bathed and baptized in the ideals of the founders of the republic, well, the US Constitution will cease to have any meaning, and all you'll end up with is greasing the wheels of an oligarchical class in perpetuity. Arguably, this has been the case for well over 150 years at this point. And as Styx pointed out, government is a dysfunctional mess, and you've ended up with a massively cumbersome bureaucracy. Which begs the question then, what is the US Constitution actually doing? Functionally, echoing the sentiments of Lysander Spooner. But whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. Written in the 19th century, by the way, and also Michael Malice, expecting politicians to agree to be bound by the Constitution or by the intentions of dead men is more utopian than communism. And to follow on, academic agent, those people who pretend the American Constitution has kept it the land of the free are actually supporting the status quo and defending America as it stands right now. Boggles my mind they exist. True, you are still championing the very anchor that has made this Leviathan, or clinging to its ineffectiveness. Why? All this, the entire New Deal, Social Security, dozens of federal agencies, Civil Rights Act, are totally unconstitutional and illegal per the 10th Amendment. It's almost like power does what it wants, and none of these old pieces of paper matter. True. I mean, look at how amendments are done. It's a simple majority, albeit a large one, 2/3 of majority vote in both the House and the Senate for proposition, and ratification by 3/4 of the states to become part of the Constitution. It doesn't even go through the executive branch. The only thing sacred about the Constitution, then, is its malleability and its capacity to become whatever it needs to be by the whims of those in power. Or even this notion that people need time to understand what they're voting on. Give me a break. Styx himself has said over 90% of people are basically cavemen who haven't the faintest idea of the duties and functions of anyone they send to Washington, utterly clueless, and once they are there, are completely removed from those who voted for them. Not only that, but those in power are not chosen by the people. It's a pre-selected list of puppets that are beholden to whatever force put them on the ballot in the first place. So this idea that you need to have more informed voters, as if that is somehow going to translate into more morally upstanding politicians, more beholden to American constitutionalism, more resistant to corruption, is a delusional pipe dream. Take a look at the current machinations of the Democratic faction. 2020 was mischievous at best and straight up malicious at worst. And even then, no sane person believes that Joe Biden was running a damn thing. The current so-called nominee was chosen out of thin air, and the previous corpse was simply shafted by party insiders, who according to Biden himself, they did because his mere presence was a hindrance to their electoral chances. He outlived his usefulness, and all of this was done in plain sight. And you know what the citizenry did? Absolutely nothing, because the citizenry will never do anything. It doesn't hold politicians to account in any meaningful manner. If any laws are broken or ethics violations occur, does anything happen? Nope. Some hearings happen, maybe some pieces in the media, blah blah blah, pure theater, and nothing more. Nothing is done by the citizenry ever Everything is done via proxies. It is a dice roll and hope for the best. All democracy does is act as this ceremonial procedure to give the people the appearance of power, whereas a quick glance at the size of the bureaucracy would swiftly indicate it doesn't do anything more than enable the legitimacy of the machine to keep moving in any direction it pleases via the approval of the ballot box. Once the vote is cast, your say in any affairs essentially disappears. It's given people the deluded idea that civic engagement is the only way people matter. Considering the greatness of previous ages did not require this level of civic engagement to achieve glory, I don't know why the hell we needed to achieve the only metric our civilization actually aspires to, which is rampant consumption and nothing more. Our current civilization is actually barbarically primitive in that regard. There is very likely nothing you can do personally. You are battered by the winds of history. It's the truth, but it's not the one that people want to hear. I'm not saying this to blackpill you all, by the way. I'm telling you this so that you can get off this ridiculous drug called democracy, stop participating in this facade of a movie, and realize you're just in history, all the while embracing the wonderful world of sobriety and disengagement. It's a TV show, folks, and never anything more than that. Cheers for watching, and once again, I apologize for nothing.